As busy entrepreneurs, the most valuable thing in our lives is time. Every day we have to prioritize our time and focus on what's most important, which, unfortunately, can cause some other important tasks to easily slip by unnoticed. For me, one of those important tasks that seemed to always be pushed off until I absolutely needed to do it for a new product or business idea was researching and staying up to date with the needs and desires of my ideal customer. It was so tedious reading social media posts, combing through comments, searching for and investigating the competition. But what if this could be done on autopilot and kept up to date as often as you wanted it to be, without opening an app, searching sites, or stressing about other tasks you could be doing? Or what if this could be done without hiring an assistant and still every week you had a detailed report delivered to your inbox on holidays, weekends, or any day you want, without worrying about sick days or needing time off? Today, I want to show you how I have automated my customer research so that every newsletter email I send, every social media post I write, and every video I record covers the latest information my ideal customer needs. Welcome to Business AI Automators, the place where we make automations bow to your entrepreneurial spirit. I'm John Gibson, your guide on this journey. I'm an entrepreneur with nearly 20 years of experience running various businesses. I'm not a software engineer, but what I am is a seasoned problem solver who's mastered the art of using automation and AI to turn my business into a well-oiled machine. My mission here is to empower you with smart, easy-to-implement AI automations that'll save you time and money and give you the mental space to focus on what truly matters in your business and life. Today, we're going to automate our customer research, create our customer avatar, and update it as often as we want, using AI to swiftly mine and analyze the data, transforming how we meet our customers' demands. If you're ready to turn the tables and have the data chase you for a change, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, make sure to hit the notification bell, and share this video with fellow entrepreneurs. All right, let's get down to business and walk through the steps that will transform your customer research from a chore into a high-speed, automated power play. What I'm about to share with you is how I do things. There may be some small tweaks that you can make to fit with your business. If you need some guidance, let me know. This automation is broken down into 3 separate workflows. We'll start with workflow 1, where we'll deploy Reddit to tap into the pulse of our ideal clients' conversations. Obviously, there are many places we can pull data from, but for today's example, we'll use Reddit. The goal of this workflow is to find posts written by our ideal customers. We'll then move to workflow 2, where we'll grab that invaluable data to analyze. Next up, in workflow 3, we'll bring in the heavy artillery, AI, to analyze this new data with precision. And to craft and refine our customer avatar. Now, what's an avatar, you ask? Think of it as a detailed portrait of your client or customer, not just their demographics, but their dreams, obstacles, emotional drivers, and more. Now, I am following a process I've learned and utilized over the last year since OpenAI has been a common thing. I've used this process with both B2B and B2C businesses. In today's example, I'll be researching, you, a busy entrepreneur who wants to learn how to automate important parts of your business with the use of AI. I'll be looking at your competition and dreams. Then, I'll break down Eugene Schwartz's 5 stages of customer awareness. We'll look at problems and challenges, emotions, motivations, and any other possible solutions that someone like you may be looking for. In the end, we'll complete a picture so vivid, it'll feel like they're right there with you. Well, that's the goal at least. If you have an outline you like better to format your avatar data, go for it. You should be able to do a similar thing with the automation I'm going to show you. Let's break down our digital toolkit. Reddit is our first stop. It is a great place to see the questions, concerns, and conversations our ideal customer is having on a daily basis. We can use any site we want, but just for the example, we'll use Reddit. Next is Notion. I use Notion as my command center, keeping my prompts, avatar profiles, and processes in one tight ship. If you have another program you would rather use, please use it. Any type of project management tool will work. Now, Google Docs will play a minor role, but I like to use this to reference all of the scraped data if I need to. Google Sheets will serve as our ledger, neatly cataloging all that scraped data, mostly because Task Magic runs well with Google Sheets. Speaking of Task Magic, it is quickly becoming one of my favorite automation tools. It has essentially removed my need for a VA for all of the mundane, repetitive tasks I used to hire out. And now, the heavy hitter, Zapier. It plays the role of formatting our messages we'll send to OpenAI and organizing the responses. And finally, the brains of the operation, OpenAI. We'll use this new powerhouse to do our analysis and summarization of all of the data we grab. Now that we've mapped out the digital terrain, it's time to gear up. Our goal here is simple. Get all our tools ready, so that setting up these AI automations is as smooth as possible. You can create the necessary documents and tables on your own, Or, for a shortcut, click the link below to join my newsletter and get access to all the documents already prepared for you. First, let's dive into Notion. This is where I've crafted a dedicated database for my customer avatars. Depending on your workflow, you might opt for a different organizational style. I've tailored mine for seamless integration with other automations I've already set up. To follow my lead, create a Notion database with the following columns: avatars, awareness level, problems and challenges, emotions, motivations, and alternative solutions, each appearing twice. So why do we need 2 columns for each section? Notion has a limit to the amount of text we can put in each cell. So we're splitting the data across 2 columns each to keep within Notion's text limits. Moving on to Google Sheets, because of how TaskMagic likes to play with sheets, we'll be creating several within our workbook. They include groups to scrape, scraped URLs, URLs to loop, Reddit content, and content to evaluate. In groups to scrape, you'll simply need a header in column A. Scraped URLs also gets just a header in column A. URLs to loop is where the magic starts. You'll set up a formula in A2 to filter out duplicate links from the second sheet, because there is a chance we'll grab the same links multiple times. The equation ensures uniqueness in our dataset. In Reddit content, place headers in columns A and B for post titles and content respectively. And in content to evaluate, we have 2 more headers, and in row 2, another equation. The equation does 2 things. First, it ensures that we don't have duplicate posts coming from the scraped post. We shouldn't if we've done the other steps correctly, but I just want to make sure. Next, the formula flips the data over so that the last row in the Reddit content sheet will be at the top of the content to evaluate sheet. This is important when it comes time to send the information to OpenAI. On to Reddit. Here, find at least 2 active groups where your ideal clients hang out and engage. I found some automations groups and a Zapier group that seem pretty active. The more active the group, the fresher the data. Copy those group links into the groups to scrape sheet. TaskMagic is next. If you're not familiar with this tool, it's a lifesaver, automating tasks that would otherwise require a virtual assistant. It can click through to websites, log in, search, scrape specific information, write text, and so much more. Check it out through the link below if you haven't already. For Zapier, ensure you have access. This tool will be indispensable for structuring our data to interface with OpenAI. And speaking of OpenAI, access to their API is crucial. If you're not set up yet, the link in the description will guide you. First, we'll open TaskMagic, a tool that will be integral in automating our customer research. If it's your first time using TaskMagic, you'll be prompted to choose between a guided recording or apps. We are going to use a guided recording. If you've done this before, you'll know that you need to click Add New Automation, then Guided Recording. After selecting the guided recording, a browser will open alongside a list of steps. Here, we'll add the website we're using, reddit.com/login to step 1. Then click Save this step and go to URL. If your research doesn't require you to log in, you may skip the login steps. However, I'm going to walk you through the login process because it's often necessary for full access to the information we need. In the browser that opens, avoid using social media logins because they can disrupt the automation due to 2-factor authentication prompts. Instead, we will manually input our username and password. If you regularly use Reddit and want to use a more secure login for your personal account, it might be a good idea to create a throwaway account that you specifically use for this automation. To create the login steps, just click the green plus to add a new step. And for this step, we will use record and then select type. To enter your username, click in the box and then type or paste your username. You should see it show up in the bar at the bottom. Next, click confirm. At this point, I always like to test out the step by clicking the play button here to make sure it shows up. Now repeat the process for your password. Notice that you'll just see a bunch of dots, but after you click confirm, you can make sure it actually shows up correctly by clicking the 3 dots next to the step name and then clicking edit. Next, we need to record clicking the login button by adding another step, going to record, then the click button. At this point, click the login button and make sure that it says found element. Then finish it by clicking confirm, and finally test it out with the play button. It should log you in at this point. Next, we'll navigate to the specific groups or communities from which we want to gather information. So let's add a new step, but this time we're going to click URL. Then input one of the URLs you found. Click Save. and then play the step to make sure it takes you to the correct URL. Now we get to the heart of our automation, scraping data. At this point, you have two options. We can add a scrolling step to make sure all of the posts we want to use are showing, but for me, this group isn't active enough for me to need to add the scrolling step. Otherwise, I'd have a lot of more repeating data than I need. So we won't add a scrolling step today. For this step, click the scrape option and choose List to collect multiple items. This step teaches Task Magic exactly what data we need so that we can reliably gather it in the future. When scraping, we'll specifically target the titles of posts. So hover over the first post title and make sure that only the title is highlighted in green. Then click it. Repeat this with 3 to 4 of the titles, and eventually you should see all of the titles outlined in purple. At this point, look up at the top and you'll notice a column of data. It should only be filled with the post titles, but we really don't care about the titles right now. We just want the links to the post. So click on the 3 dots and select Scrape Links. You'll notice that all of the cells will now be filled with links to the posts. Now click Confirm. At this point, we are done with showing Task Magic the steps. So click I'm done to save all the steps. Do not click Exit Recording. That will delete all of these steps. Now that we are done recording the step, we need to set up our trigger. This trigger is what starts our automation process. You'll find the Setup Trigger option at the top. Clicking on this gives us a lot of choices. You'll notice that you can trigger this with any number of applications. We can also schedule our automation to run at regular intervals, daily, weekly, monthly. Or we can use a webhook from another program, or we can trigger it to run in a loop. For today, we'll select the loop option because it allows us to cycle through all of the groups in Reddit. Now, we're going to incorporate Google Sheets into our Task Magic automation. Click Setup. In this box, we'll need to paste the share link from our Google Sheet, and you'll see that we need to share the sheet with automations@taskmagic.com. So open your Google Sheet and head to the Share feature. Now add automations@taskmagic.com as an editor. This lets TaskMagic access and manipulate our sheets. Once shared, copy the Google Sheet share link and paste it into TaskMagic. You'll be prompted to select a worksheet. We're using groups to scrape for this example. Make sure your header is in column A and visible in TaskMagic. If it's not showing up, double-check your sheet and click Check Again in TaskMagic. If it all looks good, go ahead and click, well, looks good. Now, let's set up the loop schedule. To do this, first, make sure that this top box starts at row 2 and choose the number of rows you would like to loop at a time. This depends on the number of links you have in your first Google Sheet. If you found 5 groups you would like to search through with this automation, you'll want to put 5. If you found 100, then put 100. In our example, I'll put 3 because I found 3 groups. I'll come back and adjust this later after some more searching. This decision affects how much data TaskMagic processes in each run. Here's a tip. TaskMagic currently moves to the next set of rows each time it runs. So if you tell it to run 10 rows at a time, the next time it runs, it will start at row 21, then 31 after that. If you don't have any info in those cells, it won't run. So you might want to manually reset the starting row each week, or fill down your rows with repeat links to ensure continuity. Now let's set the schedule frequency. For most businesses, weekly updates are sufficient to capture new data without being overwhelming. Select the time and day that fits your workflow best. Finally, confirm all your settings and hit Continue to activate your schedule. And just like that, you've set up the automated trigger for your customer research. But we're not done yet. Now, let's set up what we are actually looping. That is done with this green bar here at the top. We only need to loop the necessary steps, in this case, steps 5 and 6, as we don't need to log in repeatedly once we're already in the system. So take the slider and adjust it to loop between steps 5 and 6. This is where the automation focuses on the specific tasks that need repetition. Now go to step 5. We need to edit this so that it loops through all of the links we put in the Groups to Scrape sheet. Click on the 3 dots, select Edit. Then delete the link you currently have in there. Next, click on the Groups to Scrape element and it will fill in our box. Click Save, and we are all set for the loop. At this point, we need to make sure the scraped links are being sent to the right place. Down here at the bottom, click Send to Google Sheets, and we'll set this up in a similar manner to the trigger. Copy and paste the share URL to the box that says Enter Spreadsheet URL. This time, we are sending the data to scraped URLs. Make sure it's targeting the correct column in your Google Sheet. Column A should have the header we're looking for. If it doesn't appear right away, refresh a couple of times by clicking Check Again or double check that step 6 is configured properly by clicking on the 3 dots and selecting Edit. There should be some information in at least one of the boxes. If you don't see anything, you'll need to delete the step and click the green circle again to record the step. But if everything looks good with your Google Sheet, click Looks Good. Now, it's testing time. Click on Play Steps to initiate a dry run. This will open up your browser and display each step being executed. You should be logged in already, so it'll bypass the login steps and move straight into the action. Watch as the automation processes each link, collects titles, and moves through your list. If all goes well, you'll see Loops Complete and the browser will close. When this runs live, it's all behind the scenes. No browser will pop up. You'll simply find your results neatly in the scraped URLs sheet. From my run, I got 75 URLs. Your results may vary. Now, let's talk about cleaning our data. We want to avoid duplicates and ads. The formula in the URLs to loop sheet helps with this. It's set to filter out any repeats and those pesky ad links from Reddit. If you look at my links in URLs to loop, about half have been filtered out. That's because most were duplicates and the ads were removed. Using the formula is a smart way to ensure we only work with the content we need, rather than sifting through the same data repeatedly. Lastly, let's activate our automation. Choose whether to run it from your desktop or the cloud. Running from the desktop requires your computer to be on, while the cloud runs independently. Once you decide, just click Turn On, and your automation will be scheduled to run as frequently as you need it to. And that concludes Workflow 1. Next up, we need to create a workflow that will loop through our scraped URLs and pull in the information that we can use to analyze our ideal customer. But first, if you're finding this tutorial helpful, give it a thumbs up. And if you really want to show some love, comment below and let me know what questions you have. The more likes and comments this video gets, the faster I'll be able to put out the next video. Alright, it's time to construct our second workflow in this process. If you haven't already, go ahead and click on the back button to get to your main home screen. From there, select Add New Automation and choose the guided build, just like before. Now, I'll spare you the login details. We've done that dance already, and I'll skip through this setup and get logged in. Once logged in, pull up the Google Sheet we previously set up. Grab any link from the scraped URLs you've collected. Try to find a link that has several paragraphs in the post, which will make sense in a moment. Click the plus sign to add the URL and navigate to the page. Once you're at the post, it's time to extract two key pieces of information, the title and the content. We start by scraping the title. Click the plus sign, select Scrape, and this time, we are going to use single since we're collecting one piece of data at a time. Highlight just the headline, ensure it's the only text in the green box, and confirm. Next, we scrape the post content. Again, add a new step, choose Scrape, and select Single. But this time, ensure you highlight all of the paragraphs. This is why you want to use a post with more than one paragraph. Just move your mouse around until the green box surrounds just the text of the post. Confirm you've captured all the content before moving on. If you don't see the text, delete the step and redo it. We need all the content for a thorough analysis. Now, let's go and set up the trigger. We are going to use the loop function again. Set it up like we did before by pasting the share link to the Google Sheet. Select the URLs to loop sheet to avoid duplicates, verify that it looks correct, and then click Looks Good, and set the number of rows to loop through. You can loop through as many rows as you would like, but think about the number of links you'll have for each run. You might get about 10 posts per group you work with. If you're only looping through 2 groups in the previous workflow, it would be smart to limit your rows to loop through to below 20 in this workflow. If you are looping through 10 groups in the last workflow, then maybe keep it under 100 loops in this one. That is, unless you plan to check your automations on a regular basis to make sure you are not starting a run on an empty row. Now, I am going to schedule my automation about 30 minutes after the previous workflow, just to be safe. This will ensure that we have a fresh set of data to work with each time. Next, let's specify which steps to loop between. In this case, steps 5 to 7, which involve navigating to the URLs and scraping the required data. Next, adjust step 5 so that it pulls dynamically from the URLs to loop sheet. The final piece of the puzzle is sending the scraped data to our Reddit content sheet in Google Sheets. As long as you have the headers in columns A and B of the Reddit content sheet, then you'll see steps 6 and 7 automatically populate in these columns. Click Looks Good, and then on to the last step. Let's test the automation to ensure it's capturing and organizing the data correctly. After confirming that the Google Sheet is populated with the scraped data, it's time to activate the automation. These two workflows ensure that each week we're gathering fresh insights directly from our target audience's discussions. Next, we'll take all this rich data and put it through the analytical power of OpenAI, which will be our next step in automating customer research. Has this been helpful so far? Are you learning something new? If so, make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so you won't miss out on my next automation process. The video is already in the works, but speaking of other automations, what would you like to have automated in your business? Let me know in the comments below. Who knows, I might take your idea and build it for you. Now let's move to the final workflow and get AI analyzing, building, and updating our avatar. To get started, create a new Zap inside of Zapier. To get started, click on the trigger step to open the apps we can choose from. We are going to start by selecting Schedule. Once that loads, click in the Event box. Then, select how often you want this automation to run. I'll set this to run every week. At this point, click Continue, followed by clicking into the Day of the Week box. Then, select which day you want your automation to run. For me, I want it to run every Saturday. Next, click on the Time of Day box and select what time you want it to trigger. Because my other automations in TaskMagic are running at 1 and 1:30 a.m., I want to set this one at 2 a.m. With every step of your Zaps, make sure to test them to make sure they work properly. Next, integrate Notion, which is my database for housing client avatars. Remember, you can use any tool you would like to use. With Notion, make sure that your Notion database is shared with Zapier to facilitate this connection. Without sharing, Zapier can't retrieve the information needed. To start, click on this box to open the apps list. Then search for Notion. Next, click into the Event box and scroll to the bottom to find the Find Database Item event. Click Continue. Then make sure you are connected to the correct Notion account, and then click Continue. Then click into the Database box to get a drop-down list of your database items. Now find and select your client avatar database. Then search for the title that represents your client's avatar. For me, it is Business AI Automators. Then test the step to pull in your data. After connecting to Notion, we'll move to Google Sheets to pull in the data we just finished scraping. For the event, choose Get Many Spreadsheet Rows to import data from the Reddit scraped data sheet, then connect the correct account. Select the Drive folder you saved the spreadsheet in, and finally, select the correct spreadsheet. Now for the worksheet, we are pulling from the Content to Evaluate sheet. If you downloaded the worksheet below or set it up exactly like I have it, the Content to Evaluate sheet has an equation that will ensure you are pulling from the most recent posts. In the Columns block, we only need to pull from columns A and B and set the row count to the number of rows you are looping through in the second workflow in TaskMagic. Any more than that won't be useful. Leave the first row as 2 because of the headers in row 1. Now test this step. These next 2 steps are optional. I like to save all of the data we have in the Google Sheet to a Google Doc, so I can reference it later. I do this by using the Google Drive app so that I can create the file and determine where it is located in one step. To start, add a new app and select Google Drive. In the Event field, select Create File from text. Then make sure your account is connected. Select the correct drive and folder. Then give it a name. I like to call it Reddit Content to Evaluate with today's date, using the Zap MetaHuman Now syntax code. Now onto the file content. Here we can use the Rows field, which has all of the data we grabbed in the previous step. Then we want to set the Convert to Document field to True. After that, give it a test and check to see if the file was created correctly. This next step was once needed but is now optional. I originally put a step to truncate our data so that we could easily send it all to OpenAI, but while I was creating this video for you, OpenAI announced GPT-4 Turbo that can handle 128,000 tokens, or in Sam Altman's words,
that's 300 pages of a standard book.
So we don't necessarily need to truncate the text unless you want to have a little more control over your token usage, which is something I am always a fan of doing. So I'm going to be leaving this in. To do this, search for Formatter by Zapier. Select text as the event. Look for Truncate in the Transform box. Then in the Input field, select the Rows field from our Google Sheet. And then put however many characters you want. into the max length block. I'm going to put 20,000 because that has worked out well for me. We can leave everything else blank and then test this step. Next, we leverage GPT technology to analyze our data. Instead of using the OpenAI app, we'll use ChatGPT for its conversational memory, which saves tokens and provides context for each step. To set this up, make sure to connect your OpenAI account. Now let me explain some parts of this app. User message is where we will put the request we are sending to OpenAI. Here I like to put a few things. In this first prompt, I want OpenAI to analyze all of the content we scraped and determine the competition we have out there. What other services are they looking for? Next, I want to know their dreams and the obstacles they face around their dreams. To do that, we must give OpenAI some information. First, I want to include a little about my business, ideal customer, and what I offer. Next, I want to tell it what to do, so we get the information we're looking for. Then, I want to include how I would like it to look when the response comes back by telling it how to format the output. And finally, I want to attach the data we scraped. If you'd like a detailed explanation of how I put together prompts to reliably get the response I'm looking for, you can get access to a bonus training in the link below. Once we have our user message finished, which is the most time-consuming part, we can move on to the next step, which is to select the model we'll use. I highly recommend using the most recent version, which is GPT-4 1106 Preview. This is the model that allows us to use the massive token limit. It's also much faster and provides the best results. And OpenAI was nice enough to reduce the price of GPT-4 tokens by about 2 to 3x. But if you would prefer to use a different model, go for it. Next, let's set a memory key. This needs to be something that will be unique for each run that you do, but will stay consistent within each run. In this example, I'm going to use the Google Doc ID. After this, the username and assistant name can stay the same, but the assistant instructions is very important. Here, you want to tell OpenAI who it is. I like to make sure that it understands that it is a target audience or customer researcher with any other information that it needs to understand about its role. Once we are done with the assistant instructions, let's move to the max tokens. I recommend putting 1,000 here. The responses I get back are never this high, but I also don't want an entire novel on the topic. I usually leave temperature and top P alone. At this point, let's send a test and make sure it works. It may take a minute or two for the result to come back, but once it does, you will see the result that came back. Look it over. Does it look like you expect? If it doesn't, my recommendation is to take the prompt and go to the ChatGPT website to test out your prompt so that you are not wasting money on tokens. After using any of the OpenAI apps, I recommend putting a delay afterward. The need for this depends on your organization's API rate limit. I know that OpenAI just raised the rate limits, but we don't want to run into an error because we tried to call the API too soon after getting our response back. A 1-minute delay is usually long enough. So select the delay by Zapier app, and in the event box, select delay for. Then set the time delay for value to 1 and the time delayed for unit to minutes. I hope you have learned something new so far. If so, give the video a thumbs up. With the process I like to follow to create my client avatar, we will be repeating these steps 5 more times. So, instead of repeating the explanation of how to set up each step 5 more times, let me just give you a quick overview of how these steps will be different. But a quick tip, I highly recommend that you update the names of each of these steps so that you can easily find each of them. After the first message, we don't need to attach the scraped data anymore. So go ahead and delete that from your user message. But what should be included in the user message? Well, in the second step, I like to build a profile for my avatar at each of the awareness levels taught by Eugene Schwartz. The next prompt looks at their challenges and builds some ideas around how to address those challenges. Next, we look at their emotions and look at ways to address their primary and secondary emotions. After that, we are looking at their motivations. And finally, some possible solutions. Once we've tested all of these prompts and are happy with the result, it is time to update our old customer avatar with the new one. Let's start with the first pieces of information, which I titled Avatar, which covers competition and dreams. I could probably name it something different, but it has stuck with me. To do this, we'll ask OpenAI to analyze the previous avatar and the current avatar. Then, somewhere in our user message, we need to provide this information. The previous avatar is found in our Notion database we pulled in at the beginning, so click on Find Database Item in Notion and search for the section with Avatar. If you remember, we split Avatar 1 and Avatar 2 up into 2 separate fields inside of Notion. So we'll need to make sure we add both. When you do this, you will most likely not have any data inside of this field. I do because I ran this as a test prior to showing you how to do this. Next, we'll need to add our current avatar information. This is found under the ChatGPT app that we titled Avatar, or whatever you decided to name it. We are specifically looking for the field titled Reply. Once you set up the user message, you'll go through the same steps you did in the previous ChatGPT apps. Like before, now we have 5 more repeating steps of combining each part of the customer avatar. So I'll just quickly finish this. At this point in the process, because I am using a Notion database in the way that I am, which has its purpose for other automations I run, I need to split each of the combined results from OpenAI into 2 sections. This is simple because of the predictable reply that I get from my prompts. To do this, select Formatter by Zapier. In the event block, put text. Then in the transform box, select split text. Next, in the input box, we are going to put the reply from the combine avatar step. And the separator is going to be one of the headers I used in formatting the prompt. For me, it is obstacles before dream outcomes. Then, in the segment index, we want to select all as separate fields. And then test it out to make sure that it separates at the right point. We will repeat this process for all of the sections. I'll run through this quickly. The only thing you need to make sure you are doing is picking a header or some consistent, unique text that shows up somewhere in the middle of the reply. Once we've split the sections, we need to update our Notion database with the new avatar profiles. We do this by adding the Notion app. In the event box, select Update Database Items in Notion. Then look for the Client Avatar Database, or whatever you decided to call it. The item is the avatar we want to update. For me, it is Business AI Automators. Now we carefully go through each formatted section, adding them to their respective fields in the database. Here's a pro tip. Include the headers used to separate the text in the formatting steps, because they were removed during the split. Once we are done filling them all in, send a test and make sure it worked properly. With the automation steps complete, it's time to publish and let the system do its work. What we've set up is a self-updating, self-improving system that captures the essence of our customers' evolving needs. And that, my fellow entrepreneurs, is how you transform the cumbersome task of customer research into a sleek, automated process. You've seen the steps, from scraping online chatter to analyzing sentiments and updating customer avatars, all with the magic of AI and automation tools. Now it's your turn to put this prompt into action. Remember, the documents, sheets, and detailed instructions you need to speed this process up are all neatly packed and ready for you in the description below. Download them, follow along, and make this system your own. But before you go, let me know in the comments. What would you do differently? What tools would you replace? How would you organize your avatar? If you found value in this video, if these steps have cleared the fog on your path to efficiency, then do the good thing. Hit that like button, subscribe to Business AI Automators, and share this video with your network. Until next time.